if you want to tear down an entire royal dynasty, you don't actually need a massive foreign army.
No, you really don't.
You don't need a fleet of warships, and you certainly don't need dragons.
Right.
You just need a puppet show, a bruised ego, and a heavy iron mace.
I mean, it sounds like the setup to a morbid tavern joke.
Yeah, it really does.
But it is the literal formula for the destruction of the Targaryen Golden Age.
Right. So I want you, the listener, to just close your eyes for a second. I want you to step onto the tourney grounds of Ashford Meadow.
Set the scene for us.
So it's supposed to be this day of chivalric pageantry, right? Yeah. But the air is just choked with the smell of ruptured bowels, terrified horses, and hot copper-scented blood.
It's just a nightmare.
Complete nightmare. You're standing ankle-deep in churned-up mud, and the roar of the crowd is kind of dying down, and it's replaced by this suffocating, high-pitched ringing in your ears.
Oh, wow.
And underneath that ringing, there's this low, mournful hum of a cello. You hear a ragged gasp for breath, then a heavy, wet thud.
The sickening sound of a massive body collapsing into the muck.
Exactly.
If you were standing there in that crowd, just watching the dust settle, you would think you were witnessing the end of a fairy tale.
Because the good guy won, right?
Right, exactly. Because by every metric we use to measure these romanticized histories, what just happened was a triumph.
Yeah.
The wicked prince has yielded.
Huh?
This towering, completely unknown hedge knight has miraculously won the day.
Against all odds.
Against impossible odds. I mean, he bled, he fought, and he protected the life of an innocent woman.
Right, the bards should be, stringing their lutes to compose songs on the spot.
They really should be.
But, the brutal, uncompromising history of this world doesn't care about fairy tales.
No, it absolutely does not.
A knight steps forward from the fray. He's clad in this magnificent, albeit heavily dented, black steel armor. And he's swaying on his feet.
Yeah, he's barely standing.
Right. He complains that his fingers feel like wood. He mumbles that his visor must be cracked because his vision is going dark.
And his squire just rushes over, totally frantic. The boy grips the dented steel of the helmet to unfasten the clasps, just desperate to give the knight some air.
Yeah.
He pulls the steel upward, and as the helmet lifts away, a sizable, catastrophic chunk of the man's skull and his brain matter just comes with it.
It is a moment of pure visceral horror.
It's unimaginable.
The man collapsing into the mud in front of this horrified crowd is Prince Baelor Targaryen.
The heir to the Iron Throne.
The heir, the undeniable brightest hope for the future of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah.
And here is the fact that shatters the history of this continent forever. Baelor was not killed by a foreign enemy.
Sure.
He wasn't poisoned by an assassin in the dead of night. He was struck down in broad daylight by his own brother.
It's just wild.
It is. Welcome. Yeah. Today, we are taking you on a deep dive into one of the darkest, most closely guarded corners of Westerosi history.
We are stripping away all the tourney myths. We have the primary source chronicles, the maester's records, the first-hand accounts, and we are looking at the raw, psychological horror of a world-shattering tragedy.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, to truly comprehend the sheer magnitude of this tragedy, we need context.
Right, to understand the actual mechanics of how a prince of the blood ends up murdering his own brother in the mud over a lowborn hedge knight, we have to look at their past.
The deeply rooted, festering psychological cracks in their royal upbringing.
Exactly, because this wasn't just a random tourney accident.
No way.
It was the catastrophic eruption of a lifetime of tension. And it begins with the victim. Crown Prince Baelor Targaryen.
Known to history as Baelor Breakspear.
Right.
When you pore over the chronicles, the descriptions of this man are almost frustrating to read because they basically border on hagiography.
They really do. He's treated like a saint.
Yeah, he is the rarest of commodities in this cynical world. He is an unvarnished ideal.
He isn't just a great warrior.
Right, he is the hand of the king. He's a brilliant scholar translating ancient texts.
A masterful diplomat, too. He can soothe the most volatile, treacherous lords in the realm.
And a seasoned military commander on top of all that.
He possesses this unprecedented perfection. But, what makes Baelor so fascinating is that he achieved this reverence despite looking literally nothing like the traditional Targaryen kings.
Yeah, let's dig into that. Because Baelor didn't have the ethereal silver gold hair or the purple eyes of the Valyrian dragon lords.
Not at all.
His mother was Mariah Martell of Dorne. So he inherited dark hair, dark eyes, and olive skin.
Which, in a highly xenophobic society, that prized that specific Valyrian look as a literal mark of divine right, those Dornish features should have been a massive political liability.
Oh, absolutely. And we have to be clear, we are just reporting the historical attitudes of the time here, but that xenophobia was rampant.
It really was.
And it was a massive liability for his father, King Daeron II.
Right. Daeron's reign was constantly plagued by accusations that his Dornish sympathies made him weak, that he was un-Valyrian and unworthy of the throne.
Which is exactly the sentiment that fueled the first Blackfire Rebellion.
Yeah, where half the realm rose up to put a pure-blooded, Valyrian-looking bastard on the throne instead.
Right, so Baelor steps into that incredibly venomous political climate. But his royal majesty, his sheer competence, and his overwhelming charisma were so undeniable that he simply forced the realm to respect him.
And he earned that respect in blood.
Yeah, he did.
During the Blackfire Rebellion, which, let's remind ourselves, was an incredibly bloody, kingdom-tearing civil war, it was Baelor who led the devastating final cavalry charge.
At the Battle of the Red Grass Field.
Exactly. He flanked the rebel forces and utterly crushed them.
And that's where he earned the name the Hammer.
Right. He literally shattered the rebellion, and after that, nobody cared about his hair color.
No, everyone just knew he was going to make a perfect king.
But, that perfection casts a very long, very dark shadow.
It always does.
Which brings us to the man standing 10 paces behind him, cloaked entirely in that shadow.
Prince Maekar Targaryen.
Maekar. Just looking at the historical sketches of him, the man perpetually looks like he's grinding his teeth into dust.
Yeah, he always looks furious.
He is a highly formidable warrior, obviously, a brilliant tactical mind in his own right.
But psychologically.
Psychologically, he is a man suffering from a crippling, lifelong sense of inadequacy.
Because he is the fourth son of King Daeron II.
Right. Born so far down the line of succession that the Iron Throne isn't even a realistic dream for him.
He's just spare parts, a backup to the backups.
Exactly. He is completely eclipsed by Baelor's blinding light.
And this dynamic was crystallized, literally etched into the history books at that very same Battle of the Red Grass Field we were just talking about.
Yeah, I'm looking at the tactical maps of that battle right now, and this is where the history really gets under my skin.
How so?
Because Baelor gets the glorious cavalry charge, the sweeping, heroic maneuver that wins the day and gets the songs written about it.
Right.
But Baelor only had the time and the positioning to execute that charge because of what Maekar was doing in the center.
Oh, right. Maekar held the shield wall.
He was tasked with taking the punishing brunt of the rebel assault.
Just a meat grinder.
We are talking about wave after wave of screaming, heavily armed men crashing into his lines, led by some of the most lethal knights of the age.
Yeah.
Maekar stood in the mud, holding the line, taking the hits, bleeding, watching his own men get butchered all around him.
Enduring just an unfathomable amount of physical and psychological punishment.
Right. He held that wall so that Baelor could sweep in and steal the glory.
And for this, Maekar earned his nickname.
Right. Baelor was the hammer and Maekar was the anvil.
I mean, think about the reality of that for a second. Let's look at a real-world analogy. It's essentially Successful Sibling Syndrome turned up to 11.
Oh, totally.
It's like being the mortar in a massive castle wall. You take all the weight, you hold the entire fortress together during the siege, you get pounded to dust.
But the history books only ever praise the beautiful banners flying from the tallest tower.
Exactly. Maekar is doing the agonizing, grueling, foundational work of keeping the dynasty alive, and Baelor just swoops in and cuts the ribbon.
He gets all the applause.
Yeah. I mean, how long can a man be an unmoving object before the pressure just makes him crack?
And that pressure didn't just exist on the battlefield either.
Yeah.
It permeated every single aspect of his life, even within the Red Keep.
Right.
Maekar knew deep down that even his own parents favored Baelor.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. Baelor was the golden child, and Maekar was the grim, necessary tool.
Wait, let me stop you there for a second, because I want to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Is it possible Maekar wasn't just jealous of Baelor's glory, but actually resented Baelor's methods?
Right, I mean.
Well, Maekar is pragmatic, harsh, unforgiving. Baelor is this diplomatic, chivalric ideal. Did Maekar look at Baelor and think, you're too soft for this world, and I'm the one who has to do all the dirty work to keep you safe?
Oh, that is a brilliant distinction. Yes, Maekar's resentment is absolutely multi-layered.
Right.
It's not just, I want the applause. It's, I am the one bleeding in the mud so you can keep your hands clean and play the perfect prince.
Yeah, exactly.
Maekar really views himself as the realist in a family of dreamers, but a realist who is constantly passed over, breeds a very specific, toxic kind of bitterness.
And that bitterness might have just stayed buried forever if we were only talking about the two brothers.
True.
But Maekar's resentment is forced to the surface because of his legacy, his children.
Oh, the children.
Because while Baelor raised diplomats, Maekar raised a literal sociopath.
The generational divide between Baelor's offspring and Maekar's offspring is staggering.
It really is night and day.
Baelor's sons are predictably incredibly well-adjusted.
Valor and Modateries.
Right. They are polite, highly capable, beloved by the court. They're essentially mini Baelors.
And Maekar's sons are a source of constant humiliating shame for a man who already feels utterly inadequate.
Yeah, let's look at his eldest, Darren.
Darren is a hopeless, duty-shirking alcoholic.
He literally runs away from his martial responsibilities to drink himself into a stupor in cheap taverns.
Which has to be incredibly embarrassing for a proud military commander like Maekar.
Beyond embarrassing. But Darren is just pathetic, right? Maekar's other son, Prince Aryan, is a whole different story.
Aryan, who goes by the incredibly vain nickname Aryan Brightflame.
Right. He is significantly worse. He isn't just a disappointment. He is a sadistic, narcissistic sociopath.
Yeah, Aryan is cruel. He's arrogant, and he views anyone of lower birth as nothing more than insects meant for his personal amusement.
Which brings us to the grueling incident at the Ashford tourney that lights the fuse on this whole political powder keg.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the catalyst for the fall of a dynasty isn't like a complex assassination plot by a rival house.
Yeah, it's an incident involving a puppeteer.
A low-born puppeteer named Tansel.
Right. She is just putting on a show, an innocent piece of entertainment, but she happens to catch the sadistic attention of Prince Aryan.
And Aryan decides to cruelly torture her.
He literally breaks her fingers, destroying her livelihood, simply because he feels slighted by the puppet show.
It's monstrous. And the peasantry, the other knights, they all just watch in terror. They're completely paralyzed.
Because to strike a prince, even to stop a torture, is high treason.
Enter Sir Duncan the Tall.
Dunk.
Yeah, we both know how invisible hedge knights are to the nobility. They don't have castles, they don't have lordly backing, they literally sleep under hedges.
They're the dust on the boots of the chivalric order.
But Duncan is massive. He's pushing 7 feet tall, and more importantly, he possesses an actual moral compass.
He sees this girl's fingers being snapped, and he violently steps in.
He physically assaults a prince of the royal blood to protect her.
And the political ramifications of Duncan's fist connecting with Aryan's face are instantaneous and terrifying.
Sir Duncan has committed an act of treason.
Under normal circumstances, his hands or his head would simply be removed by the local lord, no questions asked.
Right. But Aryan isn't satisfied with a quiet execution.
No, he feels his royal dignity has been publicly bruised, so he demands an archaic, incredibly rare form of justice.
He demands a trial of 7.
Yeah.
Now, let's unpack the mechanics of this, because it's crucial to understand why this is so insane. A trial of 7 is a specific mechanism within the faith of the 7.
Right, it's a 7-on-7 melee.
The theological logic is that the gods will favor the just, and having 7 champions on each side perfectly aligns with the 7 faces of their god.
But historically, it's an absolute bloodbath.
It hadn't been invoked in roughly a century, not since the days of Maegor the Cruel.
Exactly. And the sheer political malice of Aryan invoking it here is staggering.
Yeah, because Aryan knows that finding 6 other knights willing to risk the wrath of the crown by fighting with a lowly hedge knight against the royal family will be nearly impossible.
He is rigging the legal system for a public execution, wrapping it in the pious cloak of divine justice.
It is a grotesque flex of absolute power.
Yeah, it really is.
Aryan is essentially forcing the realm's greatest knights to fight to the death over a bruised ego.
Right. He's proving that the royal family can do whatever they want to the small folk.
Yeah.
And the legal system will shield them.
But he miscalculates.
Massively.
Because he doesn't anticipate how this trial will force the underlying tensions of his own family out into the open.
The chessboard is set. And this forces the 2 royal brothers, Baelor and Maekar, into opposing corners over the fate of this nobody hedge knight.
So let's look at Maekar's decision to take the field. He arms himself with a massive, heavy iron mace.
He joins the side of the prosecution, fighting alongside his sociopathic son, Aryan.
Now, on the surface, you could argue he is just fulfilling his duty as a father, right? Protecting his son's honor.
Right.
But knowing the psychology we just dissected, it's more than that, isn't it?
It is entirely about his own deeply wounded pride. Maekar is not a fool. He knows Aryan is a monster.
Yeah.
He knows Aryan is in the wrong. But for a low-born hedge knight to publicly humiliate his bloodline, for the realm to whisper and laugh at the anvil's son,
He cannot abide it.
he takes the field to brutally reassert his dominance, to smash the disrespect into the mud.
He is drawing a line in the sand, like, we are dragons, you are sheep, and you do not touch us.
Exactly.
But then we have Baelor's unprecedented choice. Baelor the Flawless.
Right.
Baelor looks at this situation and he engages in a shocking piece of political calculus.
He realizes that if the royal family slaughters a true knight for the quote-unquote crime of protecting an innocent woman from a sadistic prince, it will forever rot the moral foundation of House Targaryen.
Yeah, Baelor understands that the Targaryen power dynamic has shifted. They no longer have living dragons to enforce their will through apocalyptic fire.
Right, power is now an illusion maintained by respect and the social contract.
If they butcher Duncan for displaying the exact chivalry knights swear vows to uphold, the realm will realize they are ruled by untouchable monsters.
The respect will vanish, replaced only by fear and inevitable rebellion.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for a minute.
Go for it.
Was Baelor actually being politically savvy, or is he being incredibly reckless?
Reckless how?
Well, he is the crown prince. He is risking the entire line of succession, risking throwing the realm into complete chaos if he dies, all to save one hedge knight.
That's true.
That seems politically disastrous. Are we sure Baelor wasn't just a victim of his own hubris, believing his own myth that he was somehow untouchable?
That is the tragedy of Baelor.
Mhm.
His fatal flaw isn't hubris, it's an unwavering commitment to his ideals. He truly believed in the chivalric code.
Wow.
But you are right, the risk was astronomical. So in a move that stuns the entire continent, Baelor Breakspear borrows a set of black armor.
So he isn't wearing the royal colors.
Exactly. And he rides out to fight for Sir Duncan.
Against his own blood.
Against Maekar.
I mean, let me ask you, the listener, to really put yourself in Maekar's shoes for a second. You have been grinding your teeth for decades. You have lived your entire life in the shadow of this flawless brother who is loved best by everyone.
Yeah, you have swallowed your pride over and over.
You have been the anvil. And now, legally sanctioned by a trial of 7, this golden child is standing across from you with his sword drawn, defending the man who humiliated your family.
It's the perfect storm.
I have to ask, is this trial just about a puppeteer anymore? Or is it the perfect, subconscious, legally sanctioned excuse for Maekar to finally take a swing at the golden child?
That is the terrifying psychological precipice we are standing on as the heralds blow their horns.
Yeah.
When the trial begins, all the political posturing evaporates. The visceral, horrifying reality of medieval combat takes over. We transition from a chessboard to a slaughterhouse.
The choreography of this tragedy is agonizing.
A trial of 7 is pure sensory overload.
14 fully armored men, mounted on massive war horses, accelerating toward each other. The sheer kinetic energy is terrifying.
You've got flying mud, shattering lances, the screaming of horses.
And the deafening crunch of steel on steel.
Amidst all of this bloodbath, you have a tale of 2 entirely different fighting styles.
Right. Let's talk about that. You look at Baelor, he is fighting completely defensively.
He is pulling his punches. He is practically just tapping Maekar's armor with his blade.
He is desperate to survive this chaotic melee without spilling his own family's blood.
Because he loves his brother, he doesn't want to hurt him.
But Maekar's wielding that heavy iron mace. Now, let's pause on the weapon choice here because it's important.
Very revealing.
The Targaryens are usually obsessed with Valyrian steel, graceful, impossibly sharp, magical swords like Blackfire or Dark Sister.
Right, weapons of elegance.
But Maekar uses a blunt iron mace. It is an ugly, pragmatic, brutal weapon.
It requires no finesse at all, just raw, punishing strength.
It perfectly encapsulates who he is, and he is swinging it at Baelor with everything he has.
Which brings us to the dark, hidden truth of this historical event. Maekar Targaryen did not consciously plot to murder his brother.
Right, this was not a premeditated assassination.
No, but in the suffocating heat of that battle, surrounded by the screams of his monstrous son Aerion, something inside Maekar just breaks.
Decades of suppressed jealousy. Decades of feeling inadequate.
A terrifying wellspring of dark resentment is unlocked in his subconscious. He loses himself to the blinding red fog of war.
He stops seeing his beloved brother. He just sees the source of all his lifelong pain standing right in front of him.
Exactly. In that moment of unthinking, animalistic ferocity, Maekar swings his heavy iron mace.
Let's slow this narrative down. I want you to visualize the horrific physics of this moment. A heavy, solid iron mace swung with the full rotational force of a hardened warrior who has spent his life holding shield walls.
It arcs through the air.
And it connects with the side of Baelor's black helmet.
The blow is impossibly powerful. It doesn't just dent the steel.
Yeah.
The sheer concussive force transfers through the helmet. It shatters Baelor's skull inside the armor.
A sickening, catastrophic crunch that rings out over the sounds of the melee.
And just like that, the perfect prince is dead on his feet.
He doesn't fall immediately, though.
No, the fight eventually ends. Aryan cowers and yields to Duncan. The dust settles.
And Baelor, as we described at the very beginning, takes off his helmet, speaks his final words, and collapses into the mud.
As the body of the greatest man in the Seven Kingdoms lies dead in the dirt, a mystical, horrifying realization washes over the surviving royal family.
Because a prophecy has just been fulfilled in the most devastating way imaginable.
Right. This is where the lore gets incredibly chilling.
Because earlier that very same week, Maekar's eldest son, Daeron, the hopeless alcoholic we mentioned earlier, he had experienced something terrifying.
Daeron suffers from what the Targaryens called dragon dreams, prophetic visions that are notoriously symbolic and deeply dangerous.
The Targaryens have relied on these dreams for centuries, right? It's how they survived the doom of Valyria.
Exactly. So Daeron confessed that he dreamed of a great dragon falling dead upon Sir Duncan the Tall.
But in the dream, Duncan walked away alive.
Right.
Think about the tragic irony here. When Daeron told people this dream, everyone assumed the dead dragon meant one of the wicked princes.
They assumed Aryan or Daeron himself would die fighting this giant hedge knight. That makes logical sense.
No one, literally no one, imagined that the dead dragon in the prophecy was the realm's greatest hero.
No one imagined the dragon would be Baelor Breakspear.
But the prophecy was meticulously true.
The dragon fell dead upon Duncan as Baelor literally collapsed into the hedge knight's arms.
Wow.
And with that collapse, Maekar Targaryen's soul is utterly destroyed.
Because he is now a kinslayer.
In the culture and religion of Westeros, no man is more cursed than a kinslayer.
To spill the blood of your own family is the ultimate taboo. It damns you in the eyes of gods and men.
The old gods, the new gods, it doesn't matter. You are forever tainted.
Maekar finally achieved what the darkest, most secret part of his mind might have wanted: the removal of the golden child.
Baelor is gone. The shadow is lifted.
But the price is infinite.
He knows he loved Baelor, and he knows he will never, ever be able to forgive his own careless, rage-fueled swing.
He has to live with that ghost forever.
Yeah. And the tragedy extends far beyond one man's guilt. The geopolitical dominoes begin to fall almost instantly.
Baelor's death marks a sharp, irreversible decline in Targaryen leadership.
Without his steady, brilliant hand guiding the realm, the stage is set for decades of political turmoil.
We see weak leadership, internal strife, and a fracturing of the royal authority.
This single blow in the mud of Ashford initiates a chain reaction that will ultimately culminate, decades later, in the catastrophic reign of the Mad King.
All because of a single moment of unleashed familial resentment. It literally changed the fate of a continent. So what does this all mean?
It means that history is rarely shaped by clean, simple narratives of good versus evil.
Right.
It is shaped by messy, deeply flawed human psychology, by bruised egos, by unspoken resentments, by the agonizing weight of expectations.
Baelor didn't die because a villain plotted his downfall in a shadowy corridor.
No, he died because his brother couldn't handle the emotional weight of being second best, and the legal system handed them swords instead of a conversation.
And as Baelor lay dying in the mud, as his brain hemorrhaged from that fatal blow, his final words are perhaps the most heartbreaking detail of this entire historical record.
They really are.
He doesn't curse Maekar. He doesn't demand vengeance or declare his brother a traitor.
He just whispers, "My brother's mace, most like. He's strong."
A loving compliment.
A proud acknowledgement of his brother's martial prowess, completely void of malice, directed at the very man who just murdered him.
It shows you exactly who Baelor was right up to his final breath.
Yeah.
As the funeral pyre for Baelor Breakspear burns into the night sky, casting this terrifying glow over the weeping lords and ladies of the realm, the survivors of this tragedy have to navigate the ashes.
The emotional toll on the Seven Kingdoms is devastating. The realm is in shock.
But for Sir Duncan the Tall and his newly acquired, secretly royal squire named Egg, who is actually Maekar's youngest son, the royal court is no longer safe.
The politics have become deadly.
So they flee the suffocating atmosphere of the Crown Lands. They head south, seeking a quiet, anonymous life in the Reach.
But if you think a hedge knight with a bleeding conscience is going to find peace in this world, You haven't been paying attention.
Because the Reach is dying. A brutal, suffocating drought is scorching the landscape.
The fertile lands are turning to brown dust. The rivers are drying up.
And in this desperate environment, a seemingly petty dispute arises over a dammed-up stream. Water is life. The water has been stolen.
To get it back, Duncan must ride to the neighboring lands and confront their ruler.
A mysterious, terrifying ruler known only as the Red Widow. Rumor has it she is a witch.
A monster who has already murdered 4 of her husbands.
She is a woman who operates completely outside the chivalric codes that Duncan clings to.
She represents a completely different kind of threat. Arryn was a monster of the court. The Red Widow is a monster of the harsh, unforgiving frontier.
Which leaves us with a chilling question to mull over tonight. You have this towering hedge knight, traumatized by the death of the perfect prince, clinging desperately to his vows of honor in a world that clearly doesn't reward them. When a man like that walks into the carefully spun web of a monstrous widow, can honor survive in a world that just murdered its only true hero? Or is honor just another fragile thing waiting to be shattered, like a skull beneath an iron mace?
It's a question the history books answer in blood.
Keep your eyes open and stay vigilant. The hidden histories of this world are darker than you think. We'll leave you to ponder that darkness.